TCM recently premiered a documentary about the long-rumored, infamous, unreleased Jerry Lewis film, The Day the Clown Cried. This documentary is entitled From Darkness to Light, and wow, this is outstanding. I'm a huge Jerry Lewis fan, for better or worse. You know, the work I love. The man certainly had his issues, but I find those issues fascinating. And one of the most fascinating things about him that the internet has gone hog wild on for years is this film called The Day the Clown Cried. So if you don't know about it, I'll tell you a little bit about it. Early 70s, Jerry Lewis decides to make a drama about a clown that is fired from a German circus, and he is unhappy and he's drunk one night and he insults a portrait of Hitler in a bar, gets taken away by the secret police and thrown in a concentration camp, where ultimately he is charged with, this is really horrible, he is charged with entertaining the children in the concentration camp to keep them quiet as they are taken away to the gas chamber. It's really horrible. This is based on a book. This is a story that apparently Milton Berle was set to star in at one point. It was a film that was attempting to be made a few times leading up to, I believe from like the mid to late 60s up to around, I think 72 is when Jerry Lewis took control of it and found producers and rewrote it for himself to star in and direct. They went over to, I believe it was Sweden, don't yell at me if I'm wrong on some of these details, went over to Europe to shoot it on a lowish budget, and then as the film went along, the production fell apart. The financing fell apart, and then it was found that they hadn't actually secured the rights to the story, so they really legally couldn't be making this movie. It all fell apart. Lewis went back to the US with some of the footage. The European producers kept the majority of what they had shot, but they never finished the movie. So what I had always read about The Day the Clown Cried was that there isn't a movie. Like, people are like, when are we going to see it? When are they going to release it? They should just release the movie. It was never finished. Like, production stopped. Lewis had some footage, and the rest was somewhere else. This documentary, From Darkness to Light, it does that. It illuminates the whole history of this production and what happened with the footage and who had what, and is there a movie or not. So the story goes a little something like this, what I just told you. But the twist that I didn't know about before, that I don't think I had read about, we see an interview in this documentary. We see an interview with Jerry Lewis that was done not long before he died, where he really gets into it about this movie. It's a film that, and a subject that he often didn't want to talk about. If you read the Sean Levy's King of Comedy biography of Jerry Lewis, which is one of the best I've read on him, he broaches the subject and Lewis just shuts down and said, I thought we had a good thing going here, and then you bring that up and I think we're done. I was at a Q&A when Jerry Lewis did his Dean and Me autobiography about his years with Dean Martin. Somebody asked that question and I kind of tensed up. It was a Q&A where Lewis was doing sort of a chat with somebody on stage, and then they opened it up for questions from the audience, and somebody asked about it. And I knew how, like, a lot of times that would just end a conversation. But what he said at the time was, he thought, now this is, I'm quoting Jerry Lewis, sorry for the marginally blue language here. He said, I thought I did a piss poor job, and would you want the world to see something you thought you did a piss poor job at? And that's why it's not coming out. Over the years, he had said it's about to come out. There's an old Dick Cavett interview that they show a clip of in this documentary where he says, we're finishing up editing in the next few weeks, and we've been invited to Cannes, and we're going to play it there. He always talked like it was done. The biggest monkey wrench in this whole thing is that years ago, I think it was in a Spy magazine article, Harry Shearer said he saw a rough cut of the film on video, and he described how horrible it was and how terrible it was and all that. And that's always what people have pointed to say, no, it was done. Harry Shearer saw the whole thing. And Harry Shearer is also interviewed in this. It's like a wide width and breadth of people who are interviewed in this documentary, including a whole bunch of interviews that are taken from other documentaries. It's a bunch of stuff that's taken from a documentary that I believe is a Jewish comedian saying, can you laugh about the Holocaust? I think that's kind of what, and then other people saying how great Jerry Lewis is. The film Jerry Lewis made was not a comedy. I think it had some light moments in it, but from what you see in the footage here, and you do see a lot of footage from The Day the Clown Cried, which kind of blew my mind, because I always thought Lewis had a couple of scenes. The big thing that happened a few years ago was that the Library of Congress was given all of his film materials for the film, and oh my God, they're going to show it. There's going to be a screening, and they can't show it until a certain time, but they're going to show it. And then the Library of Congress has come out and said, it's not a movie. It's a few scenes. It's a few multiple takes of a few scenes. It's audio and film, audio and visual, but we don't know if they go together. It hasn't really, I don't think, been cataloged in detail yet, but the public can go and view it. So there is no full movie. What we find out in From Darkness to Light is an interview with a man who worked at Eurocine, I want to say it was called, or Europa Cinema, which was a studio production facility in Europe. He was working there running dupes, working in their archive, and he found out that they had all this footage, and he found out that it was slated to be destroyed. So quickly on the sly, and it's a really great sequence in the film where they talk about this, on the sly, well, while this company was running dupes of adult films for video release, he made a 1-inch video, which is old, obsolete format, copy of everything that they had for The Day the Clown Cried, so that he could keep a copy before it got thrown away. Like, it was on the sly, like they wouldn't let him have it. They wouldn't let him do it legally, but he did it. And the only reason we can see much of any of this film is because he has this. Now, the film weaves together that with scenes that have been on YouTube for a while that came from, I think, a German or European newsreel footage or news organization sent a crew to interview Lewis at various stages during the production. So you see a lot of behind the scenes that is integrated into this to sort of flesh out scenes. The script for Day the Clown Cried is really easy to find online if you want to read what the movie was like. And what's amazing is that over the course of From Darkness to Light, you really see that there is enough footage that apparently was probably edited together by Jerry Lewis at night after a day's shoot to just try to have a work print, a rough cut of the film ready by the time production was done. So then you could just set to, I believe that's what he did with, as he was shooting The Bellboy, he was doing shooting it during the day and editing at night, or he was shooting it and then maybe he was editing it during the night when he was doing a Vegas stint. At any rate, it's a technique which is to take everything you shot that day or relatively recently, cut it together as you go so that when the production is done, you're not starting from the ground up. You've got a rough framework. That looks like what they had in the European cinema vaults and what got transferred to tape. The quality of that footage, which by now is all over YouTube, and people have taken that and tried to condense it and cut down to just a short version of The Day the Clown Cried. There's a lot. You really seem to see the entire arc of the story from the very beginning to the very, very end. And would the film have been a success if it was released? Who knows? Probably not. Everybody thinks, oh, it's Jerry Lewis going, hi, in a concentration camp. It really isn't that. From what you see, there are moments where he's goofy and silly and Lewis-like for these kids that are on the other side of the fence to try to give them a little joy and get a little of his thrill of performing back. That stuff doesn't work that great. A lot of what we see, I'm reviewing the actual Day the Clown Cried as much as I am From Darkness to Light, but it's just amazing. And as a fan and a film historian and a film lover, it is so amazing and thrilling to be able to see this stuff. There was an earlier German documentary, I believe, made by the same filmmakers from 2016 called Der Clown that did the same thing more or less, I think, because that appeared on YouTube several years ago, and it was a lot of the footage that you see in this, which is probably 20 or so minutes of footage in total. It was all, you could see that it was taken out of a larger documentary. Somebody had taken that Der Clown documentary, taken out all the talking stuff that wasn't in English, and then put just the scenes from the movie in there, which usually I think had subtitles on them. And it looked like they also did some reenactments to try to bridge the scenes. It was like a couple of actors like on a black box set shot in 2016 to intercut with the older footage to try to make more linear storyline. At any rate, I'm very curious as to what the Library of Congress has, because it's clearly something that is not in the possession of the European guy who provided this footage for us. That European footage of the majority of what you see of Day the Clown Cried, it doesn't look great. It looks like an old video transfer, maybe a copy of a copy of a copy. So it's not perfect. It's not color graded like a final film would. It doesn't have the proper sound mix. It doesn't have music. It doesn't have looping, sound effects, all that stuff. So it has a very stark, sparse feel to it. Would The Day the Clown Cried have been good? It might have been. You know, when I read the script, I didn't think it sounded like a bad movie at all. It sounded like a really touchy subject. And when I saw this, it was on TCM. It was followed by, and for years, everybody was like, oh my God, a comedian in a concentration camp. That's offensive. That's terrible. And then a little movie called Life is Beautiful comes out by Roberto Benigni, and it's brilliant and wonderful and wins Oscars. And then Robin Williams makes a movie called Jacob the Liar. And both of them proving that, yeah, Day the Clown Cried wasn't a ridiculous idea. And what I see of Jerry Lewis's performance in the film based on the footage that's in this documentary, it wasn't great. he was not really a dramatic actor. He became a decent dramatic actor over time, but at this point it wasn't great. Some of the other acting in it isn't great. Some of the choices aren't great, but when you see certain scenes, when you see the scenes toward the end of the film where that film originally goes, it's really depressing. It's really disturbing, and it's very effective. So I wish somebody could, Bob Borowski or somebody, could get a hold of all of the footage that exists for Day the Clown Cried in whatever form. Do proper color grading, do proper editing, do proper cleanup, as it were, do a good sound mix, do looping, do a good score. It probably would not be a bad movie at all. So all of that is to say, if you can see From Darkness to Light, I don't know if it has any, it was a film that was playing film festivals. Then it was on TCM. As I record this, I think it's still on the TCM website or TCM on demand or something like that. I don't know if it's going to wind up on Max because that parent company owns TCM. I really hope this gets a physical release. I hope it gets a physical release and maybe blessing of the Lewis estate to put all that footage together in a way that you can just watch it straight through. I know people are doing that on YouTube, but if it was an officially sanctioned, that would be really cool. But the documentary itself is fascinating. Let's actually talk about that. The documentary itself is fascinating because it delves into where Lewis was mentally at the time, where the production was. It talks to various people who were involved with the production, who were on set, and talked about how it all went, what they thought of it, and a lot of interviews from Lewis while it was being made and right after it was being made. It's really, really well done. It's very respectful to the subject matter of the film, the Holocaust, and Lewis himself, and it was just outstanding. I highly recommend seeing this if you can, From Darkness to Light.